Hey, Board Game Brody here with our channel, Let's Table It, where we get games to the table, like Open Season by Sit Down. Open Season is a card game where you will both be collecting cards that will score you points, as well as placing cards on your player board that will determine how your card collection will actually score. So as the game progresses, you will make these decisions and change strategies to score points, adapting to the cards that come out. Here is the game all set up. Each player will have a player board. All the cards are shuffled, and make sure that they shuffle them well because there are only 6 different people on these cards with 5 different attributes for each of them, and they need to be shuffled well. 5 cards are then laid face up to form the inn. You can consider this like the market for cards to gain in the game. So your turn consists of 6 steps, some short and some that, take the bulk of the time for the game. First, you will refill the inn so that there are 5 face-up cards. Then you will move your stock, which are the cards placed here, and place them over to your accolades, which are the cards that you can consider to be your collection to score points with. Once they get to your accolades, they no longer can be messed with, well, most likely. And you will place these cards face down and organize them however you'd like. Next, you will choose 2 cards from the end to take into your hand, and you will place 1 card on one of the empty spaces on your wall on your player board. When placing a card, you also need to obey placement rules, which include these bars. Cards along these bars with this symbol have a rule where the cards placed here need to be of different people or need to be placed face down. So from the 2 cards in your hand, if one can be placed on a legal space, then you have to do it. If neither of the cards can be placed on a legal spot, then you will place one face down on a space of your choice. Cards placed face down are not considered to be any type of people. Let me go over all the spaces on this player board so you'll know what you might gain from placing your cards down in each of the spots. And I will skip this top row to start with for now, as they, work on giving you extra actions as you play through the game. You probably want to get some cards on there early to gain those bonuses, except I'll explain them here soon. These 2 spots here, they will give you negative points at the end of the game for each type matching in your accolades at the end of the game. Negative 2 points for this spot and negative 3 points for each on this spot that matches it. And these 2 spots need to be of different people types. So really, this might be better to do later in the game when you know what cards you have in your accolades, but if you decide to place a card in this spot during your first 4 turns, then you will gain this attribute tile that will reward more points for each group for all the attributes that you have at the end of the game. Similar, if you place a card on this spot during the turns 1 through 2, you gain 2 trophy tokens. If during the 3rd or 4th round, then you will gain a wild token, and during 5th or 6th round, you will gain 1 trophy token. Trophy tokens can be placed 1 per turn at the very end of your turn. They are placed either on a card on the top row to trigger the listed action if it hasn't been triggered this turn, or placed on a card on the bottom row to count as an additional card in your accolades of the matching type at the end of the game. So really, there are benefits to placing cards here early, but also placing them here late as well. If these 3 slots are the same type, then you will score an extra 5 points at the end of the game. This spot doesn't do really anything, so it helps with some flexibility in the game, but this slot will score you 2 points for each card you have of the matching attribute of the card placed in this slot. So if you have a lot of cards in your accolades with, earrings, then you might want to place a card here with earrings. These bottom slots, again, have to be different people types. This first one will award you 1 point for each type at the end of the game. This one here will reward you 2 points per type. And this third one will reward you 10 points if you have the most of the shown type than all other players at the end of the game. If you place all 3 cards within these slots before the end of the 6th turn, then you gain 4 trophy tokens and 1 penalty token, which will give you a negative point for the attribute you have the least of at the end of the game. Here at the end of the game, you will score 4 points for each set of attributes, but again, 7 points if you gain that token that replaces it. Okay, so now to the top row. These are not scoring slots, but actually they are bonus actions, and they all have to have different people types to be played on them. These actions are triggered when a player adds a matching type to their stock. This one lets you take the top card of another player's stock, and these are always face up to choose from, so you might kind of see what you want. If there are no cards in the player's stock, then they can randomly take a card from their accolade group. The player who got a card stolen then gets to take a card from the in or the top card of the deck to place in their stock. This one lets you take the top 2 cards from the deck, look at them, choose one to take and place it in your stock, and the other is returned to the top of the deck. This one lets you take a card from the in to keep for your next turn, placing it face up in your personal supply. On your next turn, you will only take one card and then add this other card to your personal supply, and then it becomes your hand of 2 cards. These actions can also trigger other actions when adding new cards to your stockpile if you haven't already triggered that action during your turn already, so only once per turn can you trigger each of those. This last action lets you move a trophy token from any card on your wall to a card on the bottom row of your wall. And this will let you use a token that you already used to gain a bonus action and then move it, to help gain in-game points by placing it on the bottom row so it's there at the end of the game. Also, if you gain a wild token, you will place it on any card on your wall or in your accolades, and it permanently modifies the attribute of that card for both scoring-related attributes at the end of the game. So now, one of your 2 cards is placed on your board. Now the other one goes face up in your stockpile, and these cards cannot be reorganized, and another player could potentially steal your top card. Lastly, the card you place in your stockpile can trigger one of the bonus actions if it matches the same type of the card placed on one of the top row slots. And you can combo these actions, but you can only take each bonus action once during a turn. After playing 11 rounds, which would entail each slot on your board having a card on it, and then the game ends. Players add up their points from the middle and bottom rows according to the cards that they have in their accolades, and the player with the most points wins the game. On the other side of the player boards is another variant to the game, and it's shorter. It plays in 9 turns, but provides a different experience with kind of the similar game. You play it the same, except your trophy tokens are used differently. When gaining 1, you will place it by one of the in-game scoring formulas, and at the end of the game, you only score for the formulas with a trophy token next to them. So you will kind of see how some choices will change how and where you place cards when choosing this side of the board. But all players always plays on the same side of the boards when playing the game. Lastly, there is a variant that adds expert tiles, and the game is played the same, except during setup you will choose 4 of the 7 tiles to slot into the place of each column here. And then now at the very end of each turn, there's a step 7 added where you can trigger these tiles. It triggers if you complete its column and the attribute of each card is visible and identical. And, well, that's open season. Just remind me not to come visit your dungeon because I don't want to be seen on your wall. The game is nice, strategic game because, your choices of which cards you place each time on your board, which is 1 per turn, is determined by the cards that you have, need to play out from the end. And so it will help you determine which cards you will want to place in your stock to end in your accolades. And also, as you gather cards to your accolades, it will help you to know which cards to place on your board. So they each will determine the best way to play. They affect each other. You're limited to whatever options you have with the cards that are out in the inn as well. If you decide to place out cards on certain sections, you will be rewarded because you don't have a bunch of cards in your accolades that makes that decision easier. So you can push your luck a little bit in the game, and you might want to do this by placing out a card to determine, your scoring prior to collecting the cards for it. But you can also wait to see what cards you start getting a lot of or not a lot of, and then place different cards in those areas on the board to score them later in the game. But you will potentially score more points because you will put a better, card in that section to score points according to your cards located in your accolades. with that additional information. You also need to be somewhat strategic the way that you place your cards on the top row of your board to gain those bonus actions. Honestly, at least 2 of these should be done near the very beginning of the game so that you can start gaining more cards when triggering these bonuses. My favorite being the action where you draw the top 2 cards from the top of the deck, you choose one to add into your stock and place the other on the top of the deck. More cards most of the time in this game will mean more points. So you want to get more cards. And then stealing the card from another player's stock will give you a card as well. They will still, get a card, but maybe it's not the one they really want and they'll mess up their scoring or help you in some way or another. And you should somewhat pay attention to the other boards that other players and what they're trying to do as well. And you will see, what they take and what they leave so that you will know, the type of people that they're trying to get more of than others. It's a good, fun game that has, many layers to it. It's not just unilateral. Honestly, when playing this game with my kids, there was so much complexity for them to fully understand the best options that it was hard for them. They could still play the game, but they didn't really grasp it. The game is played at, a good time limit because for what the game is, it's not, going to push too much time onto it. And it depends on how long it takes you to place your 2 cards, really. Sometimes you will have a bunch of chain reactions with combos in your cards and setting off bonus actions, but this will also probably be later in the game. Components in the game are mostly cards. I'll call the components in the games pretty standard. Nothing amazing, but nothing that is, below normal. And again, this is Brody with Let's Table It, where we get games to the table. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We are new and working hard to bring to you videos like this one so you know if these games are ones that you want to get to your own table.